morning students. I am Rama Devi from Vijnana Bharati High School, Chirala. Today we are going to learn about the new topic in the class 9, that is cell, its structure and functions. Before going to learn about this, you people are well familiar with the word cell. Will you tell what is a cell? And you should not remember the cell phone what you are holding at home. That is not here. In biology, there is a special definition for the cell. Okay, today I am going to start the lesson by the history of the cell. Already you studied about the cell in your 8th class. In your 8th class, you studied the basic thing you already learned. Once revise that memory along with me. Okay, if we talk about the history of the cell, we get one doubt. What is cell? Who discovered the cell for the first time? In which year? Where they discovered? Everything we get doubts. Once you recall your memory, here you may remember the scientist's name, who is called as Robert Hooke. The scientist Robert Hooke, he first discovered the cell in the slide of a bark. Which is a non-living cell. Actually, we all know that the bark is the dead tissue. In that first time, Robert Hooke discovered the cell in the year 1965. In the year 1965. Who discovered the cell? Robert Hooke. And the Robert Hooke is also called as father of cytology. Father of cytology. What is meant by cytology? Cytology is a branch of science which deals the study of cell. Okay? That is cytology. And Robert Hooke is the father of cytology. Later, the first time he discovered the cell in the slide of a bark, and he gave the name cell to it. While he is observing the cell under a microscope which is prepared by himself with a simple microscope. He only prepared the microscope and he observed the bark cells under that microscope. While he is observing the cell, he find a hexagonal structure which are arranged in a order like this. He find which is also resembles to a honeycomb. The hexagonal structures. These are the cells he observed for the first time in bark. A slide of a bark. This word cell comes from the language Latin, which means a small room. Cell means a small room. During those days, the microscope is very simple. That's why he is unable to find some other parts which are present inside these cells. And he thought that these cells are empty. That's why he gave the name cell, which means a small or little room. Okay? If we talk about the next thing, another scientist called as Antony von Leeuwenhoek. He has also done his excellent work in the cell biology. Robert Hooke first time observed the cell in dead bark, but Antony von Leeuwenhoek for the first time he observed living cells, and he proved that each and every organism is made up of cells. If we talk about the next thing, what is that? What is a cell? You people will you remember what is the definition of a cell? A cell is a basic structural and functional unit of life. Cell is basic structural and functional unit of life. Why we are calling it as a basic structural and functional unit? For example, if you take this wall, It is entirely made up of bricks. Brick is the structural and functional unit of the wall. In the same manner, our body and different living organisms' body is also made up of a basic unit. What is that basic unit? That is cell. Okay, that is the history of the cell. Then, if we talk about the classification of the cell, depending on number of cells present in an organism, we classify the organisms into under two headings. What are that? Unicellular animals and multicellular animals. What is meant by unicellular animals? The name itself indicating that uni means single. Unicellular animals, they contain only single cell. Example, amoeba, euglena, paramecium, we may take. If we talk about multicellular animals, the organisms which contain more than one cell, either it may be 5, 10, 100, thousands, lakhs, millions, trillions, whatever it is. Those are called as multicellular animals. Unicellular animals and multicellular animals. We all know the examples of unicellular animals. What are that? What are that? Amoeba, paramecium, euglena. If we talk about multicellular animals, the best example, ourselves. I am also multicellular animals, you are also multicellular animals. Different kinds of organisms or belongs to multicellular animals. That is the classification. If we talk about the study of the cell, we all know that cell is very tiny one, a little one, means which is very microscopic. We are unable to see the cell and we are unable to see the cell with our naked eye, but we are able to see the cell by using a microscope. If we talk about microscope, depending on the technology development, we developed three types of microscope. What are that? Simple microscope, compound microscope and electron microscope. If we talk about simple microscope, a simple microscope, the name itself indicating that it is very simple. We are able to see only the outline of the cell by using simple microscope. If we talk about compound microscope, and also we are able to see stomata under simple microscope. We can able to see stomata under simple microscope. Later, if we talk about compound microscope, it is somewhat well developed one when compared with the simple microscope. We can able to see nucleus, cytoplasm and different tiny cell organelles under compound microscope. If we talk about electron microscope, which is very effective and expansive, used by scientists and lab technicians, which is very expansive to observe the cell organelles clearly, to observe the tiny microorganisms which are very less microns, we use electron microscope. Okay, do you understand about this? If we talk about the other thing, what is that? By listening the cell, you get one idea by listening the history and all these. Cell is a basic structural and functional unit of life. Okay, if we go to the next topic, what is that? If you want to know about the cell and the different parts present in it, we have to know about the first thing, what is that? A typical cell. You heard the word animal cell and plant cell. Did you heard the word what is a typical cell? Yes, a typical cell is a model cell. In general, there is no typical cell. A typical cell, to understand better about cell, we just imagine and drawing a model of the cell which represent all the cell organelles in it. A typical cell is a model cell which represent all the cell organelles in it. Okay? I think you get one clarity. Means in general, each and every cell, there is no need, it is not a rule to contain all the cell organelles in it. Before going to learn about, we have to know the meaning of cell organelle. What is meant by a cell organelle? We know what is cell. Then what is meant by a cell organelle? A cell organelle is a tiny part which is capable to do its function within the cell. Within the cell means the cell organelles are the parts present inside the cell. Means these are all the cell organelles. They present just inside the cell. Here also if you see many things we are finding. But are we able to see all these with our naked eye? We are unable to see the cell itself with our naked eye. If you want to observe these cell organelles, we need compound and electron microscope. Then I think you understand about atypical cell. I will explain with one example why we are studying about atypical cell. If we understand about a typical cell, then we may get one idea on cell organelles. Okay, and at the same time, here all the cells, they do not contain all cell organelles depending on the function, depending on the location where they are existing. The number and the organelles, different organelles are present in different cells. If we talk about, for example, if you take your salivary glands, where those are present? Those are present in your buccal cavity. Here you may have salivary glands. And these salivary glands, what is the function of salivary glands? The name itself indicating that they are capable to secrete saliva. What is meant by saliva? If you think about your favorite food or any sour items like lemon, tamarind, you may get watery substance into your mouth. That watery substance is called as saliva. What is the function of salivary glands? To secrete saliva. Very good. At the same time, depending on the function, they contain Golgi bodies. They contain Golgi bodies more. These are the Golgi bodies. In the salivary glands, we have more Golgi bodies. If we talk about plant cell, does the plant cell contain all the cell organelles in different cells? No. In the leaf, the cells, they contain chloroplast. And in the root, they won't contain chloroplast. Depending on the function and location where the cells are existing, it may vary from one cell to another cell. Means leaves contain more number of chloroplast and root does not contain more number. It won't contain any chloroplast. Okay, depending on the function and location, the cells, they may contain different kinds of cell organelles. They won't any cell, they won't contain all the cell organelles. In the typical cell, in order to understand better only, we are preparing a model cell. That model cell, which is having all cell organelles in it, is called as typical cell. Today we are going to learn about animal cell and plant cell. Okay, animal cell. What are the cell organelles present in the animal cell? If we talk about animal cell, here the outermost layer of the animal cell is cell membrane. This cell membrane is also called as plasma membrane. Cell membrane or plasma membrane, the outermost part of the animal cell. If we talk about plant cell, where do we have cell membrane? It just present beside of this cell wall. Means the cell membrane in the plant cell is also covered with another structure called as cell wall. Whereas the animal cell doesn't contain any cell wall. Only plant cell, it contains cell wall. Okay, if we talk about, and at the same time, the cell membrane, it is permeable, selectively permeable. What is meant by selectively permeability? We will discuss in the next sessions very clearly about selectively permeability. Means the cell membrane, it just selectively allows certain substances in, certain substances out. It makes unwanted substances to go out and wanted necessary substances to come in. That is called as selectively permeability. If we talk about the next thing is cell wall. The cell wall. Does the animal cell contain cell wall? No, only plant cell, the outermost layer. The outermost layer of the plant cell is cell wall, and it is very rigid, strong, hard. Here the cell membrane is the living one, but here the cell wall is a dead tissue, non-living tissue, non-living membrane. Okay, if we talk about the next cell organelle, outermost one part we discussed, and then we are going to the important part of the cell, which is also called as the head of our cell or our body is nucleus, the head. How like we will tell for our body, brain is the head. In the same manner, for a cell, nucleus is the head. How like if you feel your principal sir is head of your school, in the same manner, a cell is also under the control of nucleus. That's why we call the nucleus as head of the cell. Plant cell contains nucleus. In the same manner, animal cell also contain a nucleus. And the nucleus is surrounded by nuclear membrane. Every nucleus is surrounded by a membrane that is called as nuclear membrane. And inside the nucleus, it contains nucleolus, another part called as nucleolus. In the animal cell, nucleolus is present. In the plant cell, nucleolus is present. If we talk about the other material, which is a network-like structure, is present in the inside the nucleus, that is called as chromatin material. That is called as chromatin material. Okay, this one is called as chromatin material. Here plant cell contain chromatin material and animal cell also contain chromatin material. But if you see here, animal cell, it contains the nucleus in the center. If you see the plant cell, it is not present in the center. The nucleus, it is present towards the adjacent side, means towards the periphery. Why? Why here the nucleus is present in the center, but plant, it is present near to the periphery. Why? What is the reason? Here, because of the presence of vacuole, this part, the largest part in the plant cell is called as vacuole. Because of the presence of a large vacuole or a big vacuole, the nucleus is present towards the adjacent side. Towards the adjacent side. I think you understand. Why the nucleus is present towards the periphery in the plant cell? Because of the presence of a big vacuole in the center. It gives space to this vacuole. But here in the animal cell, it is also contain vacuoles. But they are less in number and smaller in size. If you see here, the vacuole is very small one. But in the plant cell, the vacuole is the biggest one. Okay, that's why the position of the nucleus may vary from animal cell to plant cell. Then next thing we are going to discuss about another cell organelle. What is that? Endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum. Both animal cell and plant cell contain a important cell organelle called as endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum is of two types. One is smooth endoplasmic reticulum, another one is rough endoplasmic reticulum. Here, if you find the endoplasmic reticulum, it is not having any granule-like structures on it. But if you see here, the endoplasmic reticulum is containing some granule-like structures. That granule-like structures are called as ribosomes. These are called as ribosomes. Okay, is it clear? And why we are talking about this endoplasmic reticulum, the granule-like structures, these are ribosomes. If endoplasmic reticulum contain ribosomes, then it is called as rough endoplasmic reticulum. If the endoplasmic reticulum does not contain ribosomes, then it is called as smooth endoplasmic reticulum. These two types of endoplasmic reticulums are present in animal cell. In the same manner, plant cell also. Then we are going to have a little discussion on mitochondria. Mitochondria is also one of the important cell organelle present both in animal cell and plant cell. Mitochondria, what is this? Mitochondria is also called as powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria is also called as powerhouse of the cell. Why we are calling it as powerhouse of the cell? We will discuss in the coming sessions. Here, outer look, just outer look, what are the important cell organelles present in the animal cell and plant cell we are discussing in this class. Okay, next. If we talk about lysosomes, which are also called as suicidal bags. Most of the animal cells, they contain lysosomes. And plant cell, most of the plant cell, they doesn't contain lysosomes. Either plant cell may contain lysosome or it. Some plant cells may contain lysosomes, some other they don't contain the lysosome. Then move to the next one. What is that? Cytoplasm. The cell entire space, inner space of the cell is covered with a fluid membrane, a jelly-like membrane that is called as cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is present both in animal cell and plant cell. Okay, cytoplasm. And the next one, here we have to discuss what is that? Centriole. What is meant by a centriole? Actually, the centriole is one of the cell organelle present just below the nucleus only in the animal cell, but there is no centriole in the plant cell. If you observe the centriole, we are able to find the centriole only in the animal cell. In the plant cell, if we talk about the plant cell, it does not contain any centriole. If we talk about Golgi operators, what is that? This part is called as Golgi operators or Golgi bodies. Some people may call this one as a Golgi operators. Some may call Golgi operators or Golgi bodies. Okay. Here we are calling in animal cell as Golgi bodies or Golgi operators, but in the plant cell we call it as dictyosome. Dictyosome. As the Golgi bodies are present, but they are very smaller in size. They are very smaller in size. That's why we call them as dictyosomes. Okay. Next, I think I covered all the parts. Now we will see the difference between animal cell and plant cell. What are the major differences we will see. Okay. Animal cell. The animal cell, the major difference. The outermost layer of the animal cell is cell membrane. The outermost layer of the plant cell is cell wall. Okay. The cell membrane is living tissue, living structure. But in the plant, the cell wall is dead tissue. Okay. The cell wall is dead tissue. Another one, if we talk about another difference. Here in the animal cell, the nucleus is present in the middle, means in the center, In the plant cell, the nucleus is present near to the periphery. Okay, remaining differences we will discuss in the next session. If you like this video, if this video is helpful to you, share with your friends. Try to subscribe the channel. If you like this video, give a thumbs up. And today's session is over.